Good afternoon and good evening, North America, and hello to everyone watching from all over the four corners of the world. My name is Joshua Fontaine, and I will be your MC and host today. The International Association of Youth and Students for Peace, also known as IAYSP or YSP, is a nonprofit organization with chapters around the world. The mission and goal of IAYSP is to advance world peace by empowering youth and students to become global citizens through character education and peace projects supporting the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Synergy is a program of IAYSP and gives young people the opportunity to present their own ideas and projects to better society. Today's Synergy event is being co-hosted by IAYSP USA and IAYSP Canada. IAYSP was founded by Dr. Hak Jahan Moon, who's also known as Mother Moon. Dr. Hak Jahan Moon and her late husband, Reverend Sun Myung Moon, dedicated their entire lives for the sake of creating peace and harmony worldwide, starting multiple organizations, businesses, and projects to help bring this about. IAYSP supports the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. As explained on the UN website, these 17 global goals are an urgent call for action by all countries, developed and developing, in a global partnership. They recognize that ending poverty and other deprivations must go hand in hand with strategies that improve health and education, reduce inequality, and spur economic growth, all while tackling climate change and working to preserve our oceans and forests. We invite you to check out our website and become a member of our global family and network. So for this regional Synergy event, there will be cash prizes for first and second place. First place will receive $1,000 USD, and second place will receive $500 USD. And first place will also have the opportunity to represent North America for the International Synergy Competition happening on March 2022, only 3 months away. So let's lay out some ground rules for the competition. Our participants are encouraged to share in the live feed chat, but we ask that you please be considerate and respectful towards others when posting comments in the chat. You are all really important for this competition, so stay tuned to how you'll do your part for us today. So I'm going to run through a general schedule for everyone now. We are going to begin by introducing our guest judges, and then we will have our Synergy presentations. Following the presentations, we will learn how we can cast our votes for those presentations to see who we feel deserves first and second. Following that, we'll have the President's Volunteer Service Award recognition, and we'll announce the results of the Synergy votes. So please stay tuned. We have an exciting program for you today, and I hope that you will learn a lot. So now I would like to introduce our guest judges. Our first judge is Dr. Sung-Ho Lee, the president of the DMZ Forum Incorporated. Dr. Lee is an expert in environmental management, critical thinking in governance and education, and the U.S. federalism and international relations. Dr. Lee was a senior researcher and adjunct professor at New York University Graduate School of Public Service. At NYU, he managed research related to the United Nations Environment Programs and taught students and government officials from China, Russia, and Eastern Europe on environment and information management and critical thinking. In governance, he also worked for the New York State Legislative Commission on critical transportation choices. He holds a PhD degree in political science from the State University of New York at Albany. Dr. Lee is the president of the DMZ Forum Incorporated, a U.S. registered 501c3 nonprofit organization founded in New York in 1997 that aims to preserve globally unique biological and cultural resources of the entire Korean demilitarized zone as a sanctuary for peace and nature. So let's all give a round of applause and a thank you for our judge, Dr. Sung-Ho Lee. Our second judge is Mrs. Jeannie Kagawa, the Director, Executive Office of UPF International. Mrs. Jeannie Kagawa is a director of the Executive Office of the Universal Peace Federation, having previously served as a Regional Secretary General of UPF Asia from 1999 to 2007. She's carried out projects at the United Nations on behalf of UPF, was elected as chairperson of the NGO Committee on Spirituality, values, and global concerns at the UN from 2014 until 2018, and is presently a member of the Executive Committee of the Moral Imperative Initiative at the UN to eradicate extreme poverty. She was born in Bogota, Colombia, raised in the USA, and studied at the Sorbonne in Paris. She worked at UNESCO and spent 28 years in overseas assignments in Malaysia, Thailand, and the Philippines doing advocacy for peace and service projects for women and youth under the umbrella of UPF. Thank you so much, Ms. Jeannie Kagawa, for being here as our judge. And our third and final judge this evening is Mr. Antonio A. San Juan, a retired educator, community organizer and advocate, and political and media relations advisor. Mr. San Juan is an educator who served in different countries, such as the Philippines, Nigeria, and Canada, teaching a range of topics from education to technical studies. He received his Bachelor's of Science in Industrial Education at Fiati University and Master's of Arts at the Manuel L. Quezon University, a school of graduate studies in the Philippines. He has several certifications and completed programs for management, human resources, and education from the University of Toronto and Ontario Institute for Studies in Education. An active community leader and founder of various community organizations, Mr. San Juan is the convener and founding director of the Ontario Council of Filipino-Canadian Professionals, president and director Emeritus of the Philippine Teachers Association of Canada, founding member of the Asian Canadian Educators Network, convener and chairman of the Filipino Heritage Council of Canada, chairman of the Filipino Center Toronto, member of the Toronto Golden Visions Lions Club, convener and chairman of the Filipino Canadian Political Affairs Council, and many more. He's also an active journalist and has done work in newspapers, magazines, and radio. So let's all give a round of applause to our three judges for being here today and thank them so much for offering their wisdom and support for our Synergy presentations. So speaking on our Synergy presentations, the moment that everyone has waited for is now here. We will have our Synergy event. So Synergy is a presentation event where youth and young adults have a chance to share their own ideas through their words. The name Synergy comes from students, ideas, and energy, all combined together, with the I in ideas expressed with an exclamation point to convey the exciting image of what this event can bring when the students come together to serve the world. Energy and the power of student ideas make a synergetic effect to change society and the world. Today, we're holding our regional level Synergy competition. Our two presentations today are representatives for the USA Synergy and the Canada Synergy. The theme for these Synergy events is bridging the divide between nations and communities. This theme was chosen to support and commemorate efforts toward the peaceful reunification of the Korean Peninsula, as well as similar initiatives underway in other parts of the world affected by conflict. Both our presenters happen to be specifically about the Korean Peninsula. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our first speaker. So our first presenters for today represent USA. We have Madoka Tsuchihara, age 25, and Kengo Kawa, also age 25, members of the college group Collegiate Association for the Research of Principles in Los Angeles, California. Let's give them a big round of applause and welcome.
All right. Hello, my name is Kengo Kawa.
And my name is Madoka Tsuchihara.
We're both from Los Angeles, California, and our focus is turning the DMZ war zone into a global peace park. So just to ask ourselves, do you know where the DMZ is located? It's just right over here. The size is 4 kilometers by 250 kilometers, and in the middle is the military demarcation line running all the way across the peninsula. So our project is turning the entire DMZ war zone into a global peace park where we want the 5th UN office to be. So the strongest proponents of this project have been 2 individuals, Reverend Sun Myung Moon and his wife, Dr. Hak Jahan Moon. So Dr. Hak Jahan explains in her recent memoir.
In his speech given at the United Nations headquarters in New York in 2000, my husband announced our vision of a peace park in the demilitarized zone. I have recommended that the UN open its 5th office in Korea, specifically in the demilitarized zone on the 38th parallel. I am supporting various groups in their efforts to turn the DMZ into a global peace park. This will bring the issue of Korean reunification to the attention of the world's people as no other action can.
So as Reverend and Mrs. Moon recommended, we also see the DMZ as a strategic location to establish a 5th UN office to help bring about a peaceful reunification of the Korean Peninsula. So why is building a global peace park at the DMZ significant? We first need to understand the situation of how the DMZ was created. So do you know what divided Korea? It's the ideologies. So an example of this war of ideologies was the Korean War. So the Korean War was a war between North Korea and South Korea. So communism is a thought centered on humankind and materialism, not an absolute and unchanging God. So the North represented communism and the South represented the free democratic nation. So the fighting ended on July 27th, 1953, when the Korean Armistice Agreement was signed. It was signed by the US Army Lieutenant General representing the United Nations Command, the North Korean General representing the Korean People's Army, and the Chinese People's Volunteer Army. This agreement created the DMZ to separate the North and the South. But no peace treaty was ever signed, so the two Koreas are still at war. So they're engaged in this what is called this frozen conflict, which is a situation where there's no more active armed conflict, but there's no peace treaty either. So this means that legally, any conflict can start again at any moment. So Korea became that final endpoint of the confrontation of the ideologies, so Godism and atheism with materialism. So Korea, as a nation deeply rooted in Christianity, was prepared by God to realize peace in the world. So what happened worldwide in the years following the division of North and South Korea shows how the 38th parallel was truly the frontline battle between democracy and communism. So the deeply rooted Christian values in South Korea declined, and communist values quickly spread its influence. So as it stands now, communist countries are not the only ones in danger, but even the democratic nations are losing to this ideology and causing problems like what we see in South Korea. So the effects can be seen by what the culture in South Korea is like now with the Christian churches. So young people in South Korea are now leaving their churches. According to the research company Gallup Korea, in 2015, 69% of South Koreans in their 20s had no religious beliefs. And this is up from 55% in 2005. We can also find interviews of South Korean youth who no longer see the relevance of attending church and believing in God, and instead worship material things. We can observe other growing problems in South Korea influenced by the communist and materialistic ideology. So, for example, we see one of the highest divorce rates in Asia, with infidelity being more socially acceptable. We see the rise in suicidal rates too. And bullying is consequently leading many youth to take their own lives. The young, famous Korean stars are no exceptions. We see cosmetic surgery as the common graduation gift parents give to their children. The problem doesn't end there. It's creating a larger division between those who underwent plastic surgery and those who didn't. So the side who received plastic surgery would bully those who didn't receive it. And do you think all this is happening in only Korea? We know it's happening in our nation too. So this is a devastating consequence that the 38th parallel brought to the world. People are living in a society where the emphasis is becoming more on materialism and the self and less on the North-South unity for the sake of peace. So seeing this situation in Korea, we see that Reverend and Mrs. Moon felt the pain as their own, and they took action by going to the North directly to address the very concern of creating a godless society, even risking their life, to bring hope for the reunification of North and South Korea. They also understood clearly how significant America plays in the success of this project. The southern half of the DMZ is currently controlled by America. America can initiate and assume that leading position in turning the DMZ into a peace park and ultimately unite the two Koreas by calling on the UN to establish its 5th office in the DMZ. With the peninsula still divided after 68 years, now who ultimately has become the victim of communism and fascism? It's the youth.
The youth has an important role in this project. We know that great history has been made by young people, and now is the time youth can stand up and make a change. But this mission cannot be done by youth alone. We need the knowledge and experience of our professors, and therefore want to work together with our professors to resolve this conflict. That is why our mission is to build a platform for righteous professors and youth to initiate the development of a global peace park in the DMZ, a solution for resolving the conflict on the Korean Peninsula. And this supports number 16 and 17 of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And up to this point, we eagerly made efforts to create the groundwork for this project. We traveled to South Korea in 2017 as a youth movement together with 120 young people, holding several rallies on peace and prayer in different locations, including the DMZ and Gwanghwamun. We also held a symposium on the topic of Korean reunification at the National Assembly, which is our Capitol building. And student representatives from Korea, Japan, and America all gave heartwarming speeches for the desire of unification. We also hosted the Hilton Conference, who was the first place national winner for the previous year's NERGY, where we focused on the youth and professors sharing education on the role of America. Before the 6th Hilton Conference, we had the opportunity to meet together and get connected with Dr. Seung-ho Lee, who is the president and co-founder of the DMZ Forum, and hoping to work with other organizations with similar goals for reunification. With all that has been done, we are working to form this platform to encourage different organizations to work on this project of turning the DMZ war zone into a global peace park. And we will also go to Korea to support the reunification of the Korean Peninsula. So the key point in starting this project is the relationship between professors and the youth. We want to educate the youth about the significance of North and South unity and raise passionate leaders with God-centered values to resolve the ideological conflict in the world. And we absolutely need the knowledge and experience of professors. And Reverend Mrs. Moon had mentioned that the relationship of professors and students is like a parent-child relationship and that they are interdependent. So once we unite the power of the youth and the professor's knowledge and experience centered on God's heart, we can make anything possible. So we hope to establish the Professors World Peace Academy as a platform for our professors, along with passionate young people of the Collegiate Association for the Research of Principles. And we also need the organization, Young Christian Leadership Conference, to all unite under the same purpose of bringing peace to the peninsula. So as of now, we have been working and educating youth in 3 nations to raise awareness of the significance of North and South unity. We are receiving support from professors on different campuses after also sharing with them the ideological conflict of the divided peninsula. And we know we also need the support of politicians, but as our first step, we need the youth who can focus on securing the freedom of the peninsula back to God. So we hope we can continue spreading the awareness of this conflict with your help. And thank you very much for listening to our project on turning the DMZ war zone into a global peace park. And we hope we can continue to all work together for realizing a peaceful world. Thank you.
Thank you so much to our presenters. Everyone, please give them a round of applause for coming up and sharing their presentation for us. Now I'd like to bring it towards our judges for any questions, comments, or feedback. Let's first go to Jeannie Kagawa for any comments or questions.
Thank you very much. I was very inspired by the grand vision of these youth who are very young in college, and yet they have this grandiose vision, which is a phenomenal thing. I mean, even taking it on the international level. Oh, start my video. Sorry. I know realistically, in order to get this project on the ground and to be realistic about how it can be done, I like the partnership idea, many organizations getting together. And the partnership between the professors and the students is perfect because you really pin down the internal part. Start with the internal, value-centered approach, which will automatically be very effective in changing society from within. I'm just wondering how you're going to move this project to the political field, because it's got to be ultimately resolved in the political arena. So I'd like your feedback on how you envision this wonderful vision with the youth and the professors to reach out to be effective in politics. And also, I was a little curious in one slide that you had in the beginning. You had the DMZ, and then you had on one side North Korea, China, Russia, and then you had USA and the Western countries, but you had an X next to that. I didn't know why you had an X next to the USA. USA make some error, or I didn't know why you. Could you please explain that also? I was just wondering, because we need the USA to cooperate and to really work together, and that they will actually be the initiating nation, I believe, of this peace park and the unification of North and South. So I didn't know what the meaning of that X meant. Thank you.
Oh yes, definitely an explanation of the X. I think it just signifies a conflict, but we surely definitely need the work of America's role in the peaceful reunification North and South Korea.
Conflict within America, as you were explaining, within America, America was in conflict at that time and is still in conflict. Therefore, we need to work on that. Is that what you meant?
Just the meaning that America can play a significant role in helping push forward the peaceful reunification of the two divided Koreas. But I'm sorry that we mispositioned the X.
Because it was right next to USA. So I was just curious about, did we make some huge error in the beginning of history?
Oh, no. I'll make sure to take a note.
All right.
Yes, to answer your previous question. Yes, about the politicians, you're definitely right. We do need the work of the political leaders in this field of reunification. And I think it's, especially as a young person, that we're starting to grow our connections with our professors and our pastors. Madoka also mentioned the work of the young clergy, the Young Christian Leadership Conference, and the connections that our Christian pastors have with politicians. We're all trying to work together with the connections that we can establish now to work towards that goal.
Well, thank you for your grandiose vision and your determination to succeed and be victorious in this huge enterprise. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Jeannie Kakawa. And let's now go towards Dr. Seung-ho Lee. Any feedback from you?
Okay, thank you, Joshua. And thank you, Madoka and Kengo. This excellent and inspiring presentation. So you covered many aspects, but also pinpoint the most important clue, how to achieve your goal in the project. So I'd like to congratulate that you focus on the grandiose importance and significance of division of two Koreas and the formation of the DMZ as you described. And the division along the 38th parallel actually signifies all the current world problems as the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. That's the origins of all the problems and sins. So you've very well covered that area. So Korea and the DMZ is not just a small area or small country people just ignore. So we need to have some means to have people get attention to the Korean Peninsula and the DMZ. And then you said in the beginning of the presentation that Dr. Hak Ja-moon mentioned 5th UN Secretariat as a means to get attention from world public. That's a very, very good point. So in that regard, I was just wondering, establishing the 5th UN office, what's the purpose of that office? What's the rationale to open new office in the Korean DMZ especially? As you know, there's a 4 previous UN Secretariat, one in New York and Geneva, Vienna, and Nairobi. So what's the rationale? You want to have another office in the Korean DMZ?
Thank you for that question. Especially, we want to build this 5th UN in the DMZ area to be able to, for the purpose of peace. And I believe that through, building this 5th UN in the DMZ, it can be able to bring more people into knowing about how we can be able to build peace, and especially you mentioned that it is through this reunification of North and South Korea. This is really the a point that we can be able to build world peace once the Korea unites. It can be able to build, make a way for world peace to happen. And so, yes, that is why for the purpose of peace, we want to build the 5th UN in the DMZ.
Okay, very good. And then, yeah, maybe we need to talk more about the specific role that the 5th UN Secretary could have, other than other issues. Okay, then another one, you made a great point, that who controls the southern part of the Korean DMZ. Actually, many Americans don't know whether the US president controls the southern part of the Korean DMZ, because the US kind of make a low key that the US is controlled in Korean kind of territory because of many cultural issues. But anyway, in order to do something, as you correctly pointed out, US government, especially US president role, is very important. To make his idea about the Korean War and the Korean DMZ is very important. To have a new view on the Korean DMZ and Korean War as a whole. So, if any, do you have any ideas how to influence or persuade President Joe Biden to think about what you propose?
Oh, thank you very much, Dr. Lee, and definitely I would love to receive more of your wisdom.
So how are you going to pursue that idea to President Biden? Is there any ways you think about to present them directly, or knock the door on the White House door? What are you going to do? So think about that, right? So how are we gonna persuade the US president to do that? Okay, it's an excellent presentation. Thank you, Kengo and Maroka. All right.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. And our final judge, let's ask Mr. Tony Senwan for any feedback from you. Please unmute yourself.
I think you're still
Sir,
muted.
we still have you muted.
I'm saying thank you very much for the two presenters for raising points and also strategies on how to convert the DMZ zone into a peaceful or a peace park, something like that. And I congratulate you for raising, mentioning certain projects that would lead to the possible reunification of the two Koreas. I have just two questions, if you don't mind. First question would be, you mentioned something about some rallies, some projects being done at the DMZ zone. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And these projects are being evaluated or assessed from time to time, whether these projects are improving, whether these projects need some further strategies or consideration and to be able to meet the goals for, of the United Nations in terms of peaceful reunification?
Yeah, those are great questions you just addressed, and over the number of years from 2017, we got a chance to go to Korea as more of that rally of young people inspired to work towards the peaceful reunification. And then 2018 and 2019, following years afterwards, growing from basically 120 to 360. And just our work our hope is also to go back and continue with that same pursuit. But we know that the whole COVID situation is a little tricky at the moment. Hopefully when everything can be more alleviated, the situation that it can permit us to go.
Okay, thank you. Are you aware of the study or the survey made on young people in Korea? I don't know whether it's South Korea or both Koreas, that it says it's not necessary to, to reunify, something like that. I think about 70% in 2017, the youth said it's not necessary to reunify. I don't know, what can you say about it?
And yes, well, we have also a study from Newsweek Japan. There was a survey conducted to South Koreans, asking at that very point if they want to stay as divided or if they want to push for unification. And unification, they wanted about 26.3%, but those who wanted to stay as they are divided, that was about 54.9%. So yeah, it's just really into the ballpark of what you're mentioning about that 70%.
Thank you. And my last question, if you don't mind, how do you envision the DMZ park in terms of, you have the south, you have this north, and then between that you have the American side and the south side, and then you have the North Korean city, of course, the north side. How do you envision it? Because it's a 200 kilometer gap. So how do you envision that park? Would it be in the DMZ zone, and would the infrastructure would be allowed in some social and community activities will be allowed, also some political, operations? How do you envision and visualize that park? Because I don't know how to, whether it be involving pressure, transportation, or some additional military strength.
I believe that the DMZ itself, they have a lot of what Dr. Lee had mentioned, that the DMZ area, it's a lot of it has very a lot of nature, and it's actually a beautiful place. And we believe that turning this whole DMZ into a global peace park and a peace nature is something that we envision for it to become a place for no divisions and no more like wars and fightings. And that's why I think it's important that first we need to really unite North and South Korea. That's the first step into us building this global peace park in the DMZ. So yeah, especially with that vision, we want to be able to move forward in that direction.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, and also going back to Dr. Lee's question of how we can be able to reach President, especially right now, we do want to prepare and working with our professors and also pastors through the young clergies. Through those connections that we have, the pastors have connections with a lot of politicians as well. So through those connections, we do want to, in the future, reach the president But right now, yeah, we want to prepare and also hopefully have a time to meet with professors and also Dr. Lee, who has more knowledge and experience. We want to also meet together to further our project as well. So thank you.
Yes, and one thing you said, you have a rally at the DMZ, Imjinga and Gwanghwamun, and that's very, very excellent. And then you need to think about the rally at the near the Washington Monument or near the White House. We need some kind of a rally arousing the interest from the U.S. government of what you're doing, what your project's importance. So you can get help from Washington Times Foundation too, based in Washington, D.C. Okay, and very much hope for your success in your continued effort.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much to our judges for your feedback and your questions. Let's give another round of applause to our presenters, Kengo and Madoka, for coming on here and sharing everything. I'd like to now move along into our second presenter. Representing Canada, we have Francois Lacroix, age 30, from Montreal. So let's give him a round of applause for his presentation.
Hi, thank you, Josh. Let me share my screen. Okay, hello everyone. Actually, let me just put on the time, so make sure I don't go over time here. My name is Francois Lacroix, representative of YSP Youth and Students for Peace in Canada, but in the East End, I live in Montreal. Recently, International Association for YSP headquarters asked YSP, all the chapters around the world, to focus our efforts on Korean reunification. And me as a representative, I didn't know much about Korean reunification, so I took it upon myself to ask someone that I did know who was involved in this, Monica Lewis. She's a director at an organization called Pbsa. And during our conversation over the phone, these sentences really stood out for me. Korean unification, Korean unification is imminent, so it's less about promoting it than it's about preparing for it. And this struck me because it made it seem like a very urgent issue because it's about to happen. It's not about trying to promote to push it, but it's about to happen. And this reminded me of something that happened, I guess, well, when I was born in 1991, the fall of the Berlin Wall. And that fall also gives credit to the fall of communism. And it kind of made me think that perhaps the fall of the 38th parallel dividing the Koreas might be a bigger fall than just, it might be just bigger than Korea, but an international phenomenon and might have much bigger impact than we think. Just like the fall of the Berlin Wall. Here's a picture, by the way, of a piece of the Berlin Wall that's kept in Montreal in one of the in the financial sector of Montreal. So what's the plan? What is my plan as representative of YSP Canada? So me and my colleagues, we decided to get the experts on this issue. Right now in Canada, we have a contact with the United Church of Canada, and they're actually very involved with Korean reunification. They have a campaign called #KoreaPeaceNow, #LiftSanctions. And we want to sponsor their experts and bring them to university campuses. I have contacts in McGill University, and there's some other YSP members who have contact at University of Toronto, and there's other universities as well. I just mentioned two here just because we have done already activities there. Sorry, my slide I think is programmed. So this is the plan. And we want to become a link for broader outreach. Now, why is it so important though to talk to students in Canada about Korean reunification? And so the next slides, I want to address kind of briefly Like, why is it so important for the West to understand what's going on in Korea? Right now, the status of unification process is kind of, wait, this is kind of annoying me. Why is it automatic? Sorry. Display settings. Okay, I'm sorry. You're gonna please bear with me. It's gonna advance automatically, but I'll bring it back. So the status unification process is interesting because there were summits in 2018 and 2019 in Singapore and Vietnam, and there was an agreement between President Trump and Chairman Kim Jong-un. However, this was more of symbolic nature, and there was no actually treaty signed. So a lot of people don't know that Korea is still technically at war, but just under an armistice agreement. So there's room left to grow, and then there's a lot of things left undone. And why is it so challenging, however? You know, despite two summits, despite the efforts of governments and political will, why is it so challenging to host and hold reunification talks and make it happen? Just like our judge Antonio was saying, there is a declining support in South Korea itself. It's not so much a declining support, but also a disinterest, or they're becoming apathetic to the situation. It's been so long. There's also Chinese interest involved, and China has publicly said that they want Korean reunification, but they don't say the complete truth, which is they don't want it under the American terms. They don't want an American democratic society of Korea. They want a Korea that's united kind of under China. So this complicates the matters. Of course, there's nuclear weapons, and North Korea itself poses a challenge to reunification because North Korea has publicly stated that they want to reunite, but under their terms. So what has been the US approach now? And we've seen the USA get involved into conflict areas such as Iran, and they use a method called strategic patience. And strategic patience involves putting so much sanctions, almost pressing the country to the wall so that they can undergo a deal. But this worked with Iran and perhaps other countries, but with North Korea, it's just a different game. They have a different mindset, as I'll explain later. And from the perspective of North Koreans, why doesn't sanctions work? They feel that their sovereignty is being challenged. And so the North Koreans, by increasing their nuclear weaponry, is a way to it's kind of their last token, and it's their way to assert that we are sovereign, and you can't tell us what to do. This is what we're doing. So the perspective of North Korea and US are very conflicting. So YSP's case is the case to reduce sanctions. So when I say we want to become YSP a link to broader outreach, our outreach is specifically for this, to reduce sanctions and to promote this idea of reducing sanctions to the students, to political science students, who economic students. And here there's a list of reasons why is it good to reduce sanctions. I'll just highlight point number 2, and this is what I was talking about. North Korea will not simply surrender because of their spirit of 자력 경쟁. So it's a spirit of self-reliance. They've been so pressed against the wall for so long. It's not, how do you say it? It's not feasible or to think that they will simply change mind if you just put sanctions on them. So what we're asking with YSP to students, to whoever we can reach to, is if North Korea says they are ready to unite with the South, is the world prepared to respond? Is my Canadian government ready to respond? Is the Biden administration ready to respond? going back to my conversation with Monica Lewis, she's convinced, and she's been working on this issue for a long time, that it's imminent. It's imminent. So here I summarize. I'll just read this slide. This is the summary of what my team at YSP Canada will do. So working with the assumption that reunification will come, we need to be ready to respond when North Korea is open to negotiate. So we want to raise awareness to change the view of the West towards North Korea to be receptive instead of defensive. And this is the key part here. Instead of waiting for North Korea to make the first step, perhaps the West needs to take the initiative to reduce sanctions and military exercises. As it was briefly mentioned in the previous presentation, there's a huge military base in South Korea, all along the DMZ. I believe 37,000 soldiers, I believe. So we want to educate students, we want to educate professors. This is so far our YSP's reach into the academic field, to think about reducing sanctions and think about that argument and seeing what can, well, and for them to see that this might be the better approach. Of course, our approach is relevant to the Sustainable Development Goals, number 16 and number 17. And this is in line with YSP's purpose. And so these are some of the advocacy groups that are aligned with our goal. They're aligned with our goal. It's not just YSP's vision, but it's a shared vision among different organizations. Women Cross DMZ, hashtag Lift Sanctions, as I mentioned, Global Peace Foundation, and AKU. So these are groups that you know, maybe I'm not the expert, maybe some of the YSP members are not the expert, but there's experts out there, and we want to bring them and speak to club students, as I mentioned. So this is my presentation. I thank you so much for bearing with my slide issue, and yeah, I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Francois, for your presentation. Let's turn to our judges now for any feedback. This time I'd like to go to Mr. Tony Senwon first. Please unmute yourself.
Oh, you're still muted. Okay.
Perfect. Oh.
We can't hear you. You turned yourself off again. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Okay, there you are. Okay. Once again, merci, Francois, for a very excellent presentation. I like very much the way you mentioned about the many things regarding the perspective of, shall we say, Canadian students, and you provided a very good background of what's happening in Korea and what's, some would say, the status of the conflict. I like that. You must be aware that the solution would be, aside from you know, inviting or encouraging your fellow students and other Canadians and other nationalities throughout the world, would be to increase awareness of what's happening in Korea, to be able to educate them and to understand what's really, you know, and what are the things that should be, resolved in terms of this conflict happening for the past 70 years, you know.
Yeah.
When I learned about the Korean conflict, I was just 10 years old. I'm now 80 years old, and still the conflict is still there. I would say that in the solution, perhaps we are thinking about solution. Let's not forget that there are also 4 superpowers who are engaged in the solution and the reunification problem. We have the American side and the Japanese side, and we have the Russian or the Soviet Union and the Chinese side. Of course, we have to consider also the 2 Koreas. So the 2 Koreas, or in terms of many agreements, international agreements, you know, conferences, they agreed that it should be, sovereignty should be part of it. But I don't know whether um, this is just an idea, whether the idea of using template, what happens, because you mentioned it also in Germany, what happens between the replication of the East and West in Germany would be a good template, not necessarily the whole template, and also the reunification of Vietnam, South and North Vietnam would be a good template to be able to arrive at a good political solution. And economic solution will come after political. So, that's my take also on your presentation. Thank you very much. I learned something.
Oh, thank you, Mr. San Juan. I think I don't. Yeah, exactly. This is why we need to bring experts on the issue, because from what I understand, such as the Vietnam example, the Germany example, the Korean example, the Korean case involves those great superpowers, and yeah, although I may not be able to talk about it, I think experts need to address it so that we can better understand, because Germany and Vietnam happened, yet Korea is stalling, and there's something missing, and it's something more intricate from what I understand. From the talks I had with people, it seems that like even East and West Germany, there was still today, East Germany is, I think, poorer than West Germany, and we don't want this to happen with North Korea, the North Koreans feeling left out. And so yeah, it requires a lot of thought, a lot of thinking, and although there's a political will, like on both sides, China, America, political will, yeah, we really do need experts on this issue and to bring awareness of what's happening. So, yeah.
I agree.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for acting as a judge and giving your input. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Tony San Juan. Really
Welcome.
grateful for your feedback. Let's go to Mrs. Jeannie Kagawa next. And I'll invite you to unmute yourself.
This was another exciting presentation and very inspiring to see, great thoughts being generated in the youth's mind, and creating a very concrete vision for peace. It's something, it's a great phenomenon. So congratulations. And I was very inspired by the fact that you did turn to an expert in order to kind of find your logical stream of how you were going to do this project, what your vision was, and what your end goal was. I'm a little bit curious because in some way, and I don't know if this was the expert that was bringing you to that conclusion, but you mentioned in one of the slides, if North Korea is ready for unification, what is the other side's response? What would make North Korea ready? Because there's been a lot of talk about denuclearization. And one of the obstacles to the unity is that North Korea keeps developing their nuclear weapons, and then the condition to really come to the table is that they give up that idea. You're saying or the lady that your expert was saying that, well, that the North Korea is ready. It's very imminent that they're going to come and want to unite us. Does that include the fact that they would want to give up their nuclear weapons, or what would be the condition for them being ready and the other side not being ready? I didn't see exactly where that could be drawn.
Yeah, from what I understand, actually, to your point, during the time of talk between President Trump and Chairman Kim Jong-un, their nuclear weaponry increased. Like it didn't decrease; it increased during that time. But from what I understand is they're doing that to protect themselves, because they feel their sovereignty threatened, and that's the main issue in the talks, is they keep their sovereignty. So, for instance, if the Canadian government, Canadians are actually allowed to go to North Korea, so it's interesting that we could have a certain play in this, but if we reduce sanctions on them or just opened up economic ties, they would feel that the idea is if we lift sanctions first, the idea is they don't feel the need to produce nuclear weapons, and slowly, you know, they'll just stop that. They'll just stop producing nuclear weapons. But yeah, that's from what I understand. Yeah.
With the one-sided reduction of national security, so to speak, because you're going to reduce the sanctions and then reduce military, leaving ourselves or the other side vulnerable, South Korea vulnerable to less military protection, etc. And then what if the other side doesn't respond appropriately? they take the advantage and run forward even
Right.
more rapidly to develop more. In other words, how would you see that coming together? Why would it be so imminent that they could make that kind of peace? Respecting each other's national security, so to speak.
Right. Yes. Let me just go back to the slide.
I mean, I noticed there was an assumption, and I didn't know what the assumption is based on. Why would you one-sidedly make your country kind of vulnerable for invasion? So I don't.
Because
expecting that the other side would reciprocate. I mean, I don't know.
I think the assumption is that so far the U.S. approach hasn't really worked. They're being patient, but it's being ineffective. North Korea seems to persevere with their nuclearization, no matter what you do. And so it seems that even if you would continue pressing for their denuclearization, it hasn't happened yet. And if you look at the North Korean, I guess the spirit I was mentioning, they won't stop. So it needs to be kind of a changed approach. But I mean, I don't think you would put yourself that vulnerable. I think because also if we don't do the first step, the West, then maybe China will, and it might become a bigger issue. I think I've seen videos on YouTube showing that North Korea, they have these rallies of hope for reunification, but of course, like it's under their terms, and they're thinking, okay, sovereignty over the whole peninsula. But there is this hope, and again, I'm not the expert, but I don't see them wanting to even attack, especially if Canada, America.
How would you position your youth activities to influence this in a positive direction? How do you see your activities, your youth activities?
Yeah, well, I can draw on one project I did at the University of McGill. There was a law being placed in Quebec. It's not related to politics, but it was related to religious, discrimination against religious teachers showing religious symbols at schools or in public office. And what we did is we had a panel of teachers, and they were just discussing the idea. And when we did that, it was so popular that not enough. There were students overflowing the room. They couldn't get in the room. And and I'm sure this Korea issue would be the same. And if you invite people on both sides that are for sanctions and not for sanctions, I think people want to listen to that. And that has been the response on previous events. So I think, hearing both sides, I think that's maybe that's important. Yeah. But I think we need to talk about it. That's what YSP wants to do. We want people to think about it. And the goal is Korean reunification. And if it's whether through lifting sanctions or increasing them, in a way, it doesn't matter. But so we just want to get people to think about it and want it. Yeah.
Well, congratulations.
I hope I can.
These two presentations have been very exciting and for me. So you've done a good job. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kagawa.
Thank you so much. And we'll move into our final judge, Dr. Sung-Ho Lee.
Hey, thanks, Joshua. And thank you, Francois, for a wonderful presentation and an excellent perspective. When I read your title of the presentation, Preparing the Reunification of the Korean Peninsula, that reminds me of that turning the Korean DMZ into a global peace park. That's sort of a preparation for the peaceful reunification of the two Koreas. And so it is an excellent presentation. And one thing you mentioned greatly is that those Korean people, they rely on self-reliance. 자력갱생 in Korean, 자력갱생. That's their spirit of mind and very much culturally rooted. So it's not about communism or Juche ideology. It's not related to that. That is very culturally rooted because especially North Koreans, even when two Koreas are united, southern side of Korean people are more kind of creative, practical, cooperative. On northern side of Korean peninsula, when they are united historically, northern Korean people are more independent, aggressive, because to defend Korean peninsula from all the neighboring countries. So that's how North Korean characters have changed. So that reminds me of the Reverend Sun Myung-moon's visit North Korea in 1991. Actually, Reverend Moon and Dr. Chan Moon both are North Koreans anyway. So North Koreans, they have a very special traits, special qualities that most Americans do not understand, including politicians. And after the World War II, after the Korean War, US government demonized North Korean people as well as government. So that every talk failed because of the assumption of demonization. So such, as you mentioned, 자력갱생, and as well as the strong kind of family ties within North Korea, strong 효정 idea in North Korea, the filial piety and the sense of 정 in North Korea. It's very strong in North Korea. So honesty and mutual trust is number one in North Korea. And also North Korean, actually as a whole, have never invaded neighboring countries or other countries in order to expand its own territory. But such a notion is hard to be understood by US and all other Western countries. That's the problem of the 7 years of negotiation that failed. So as Reverend Sun Myung-moon mentioned, a sincere dialogue with a mutual respect is needed. Otherwise, any talks will fail. So as you mentioned, the Monica Royce at the OPA, One World Peace Association, I met her several times. It's a New Jersey-based organization. When she mentioned that unification is imminent, it's a kind of a divine sense, and not political or military sense. So actually, Mother Moon said unification is just at hand, in a biblical sense. So we gotta believe it. And Monica Ruiz also planned, together with me, to plant trees in North Korea. So you might want to join that effort. So one question is that you said you wanna make outreach and network with experts. And are you planning to make outreach to North Korea, North Korean people, experts? And if so, how?
So to repeat your question, if we are ready to reach out to experts from North Korea or
No, to North Korea.
to North Korea.
So you are making a network and outreach to many experts. So are you
Yeah.
planning to make reach North Korean experts?
Yes, yes. But planning to nothing. There's nothing substantial now, but we were hoping as well through this synergy to maybe if you or any or the other judges have knowledge of this, we want to connect. This is why we're doing this synergy. So I'm sure. I think my colleague John, who helped me prepare the slides, I think he knows you. So anyways, we're willing to reach out and to really get that side.
Yeah, that's great. Actually, Canadians are better positioned than Americans because the North Korea-Canada relations are very good. Actually, some Canadian professors inviting North Korean tree planting experts to Canadian university and educate them. I think it's still going on. So as a Canadian, you have better access to North Korea. So you should reach out to them.
Right. So there's probably a whole network that we can learn about, and yeah, there's a whole network out there. Yes, for sure. Yes.
Thank you for the excellent presentation. Good luck.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you everybody at home for putting in your votes. Before we announce our winner, I would like to introduce Milhan Stevens, the IAYSP USA and North America president, to recognize some students and YSP members of the United States for the President's Volunteer Service Award.
Good evening, everyone, and viewers from all over North America, around the world. Man, I have so many things I'd love to share with you. I will reserve my comments for the end. Right now, I'd like to bestow an award upon for those who've achieved the President's Volunteer Service Award. Let me explain what it is. In 2003, the President's Council on Service and Civic Participation founded the President's Volunteer Service Award to recognize the important role of volunteers in America's strength and national identity. This award honors individuals whose purpose positively impacts communities in every corner of the nation and inspires those around them to take action too. The President's Volunteer Service Award, Pbsa, is an opportunity to honor our most outstanding volunteers and recognize the impact they make. IAYSP is an organization certified to give various levels of this award. Based on a volunteer's age and amount of hours of volunteer service they gave during a 12-month period, volunteers can receive a bronze, silver, or gold award along with a certificate and letter of congratulations from the United States President. Today, we are recognizing 9 young individuals who have qualified for the award for the year 2021. Starting with the teen age group, which is aged 11 to 15, we have Kaylin Dolar, a student at Dathan High School, and Hiramitsu Kosaka, a student from Las Vegas, Nevada, who will be receiving the Bronze Award for 50 to 74 hours of volunteer service. Receiving the Gold Award, and thank you. Receiving the Gold Award, we have Kristen Nagai, a student at Livingston High School, and Renee Nagai, also a student at Livingston High School, and you may have noticed that they are twin sisters, at Sybil Subayar High School, student in Virginia. To receive the Gold Award, all these students did 100 or more hours of volunteer service in 2021. Next, we have the young adult group, which is from age 16 to 25. Receiving the Bronze Award for 100 to 174 hours, we have Grace Magni Focom, student at Chesapeake Math and IT Academy South, and receiving the Gold Award for 250 plus hours of service is Tiffany Gao, a student at Sasayet High School, and she also participated in our last energy competition. We also have an adult group for those age 26 and up. Receiving the Bronze Award for 100 to 249 hours of service is Jeffrey Solario, the director of the Shine City Project volunteer group in Las Vegas, Nevada, and Jennifer Solario, a member of the Shine City Project group as well. Let's give these amazing young people a big hand and congratulations. They are really our model young people in America today. So see you back soon. Back to you, Josh.
Thank you so much, Milhan, for announcing all of those service students who have really contributed to just our community at large. Acts of service are a really important contribution, and every person who takes some time to do a little bit of community service really has like such a major impact. And those community service opportunities help them grow and find opportunities to find their own niche and find their own place in making a big impact in the world. So I'm really proud of all those students who took the time to do all those service hours, and we really hope that they can take that as a really big contribution moving forward. Okay, everyone, thank you so much for taking the time to cast these votes. We now have the results in, and it is very exciting. And I would like to everyone get yourselves ready, because we want to announce the winner of YSP Synergy for North America this evening. So can I get a drum roll to build up the suspense for our competition here? No drum roll? I can do it myself. Okay, the winner of our competition for 2022 is Madoka and Kengo Kawa. Thank you so much for your presentation, guys. They have won $1,000 USD and the chance to present at YSP International on their project. And our runner-up, let's also give some recognition to Francois Lacroix for all the work that he's done to present today. So thank you so much, Francois. And thank you so much, Kengo and Madoka. Congratulations on your victory. I'd like to invite our judges now to say some final words before we move on. Let's begin. Dr. Sung-Ho Lee, any final words from you?
Okay, thank you, Joshua, for the wonderful kind of MC you played role. Thank you. And again, thank you for great presentation by Francois and Madoka and Kengo. And I enjoyed it very much, and I learned a lot from your presentation. And actually, one last year, the whole last year, 2021, every Tuesday, there was a webinar sponsored by Washington Times Foundation. I sort of joined on almost all of the webinars, including me as a speakers. But still, the problems did not solve yet. And the problem of the Korean Peninsula back to square one. So everything is back to square one. So now I'm very much more encouraged by your presentation, young people, to make things move forward, so that I'm very much willing to work with you guys. So both presentations are excellent, and you both can interact with each other to reach out to North Korea, South Korea, and the DMZ and the US, so that we can all work together as this event called Synergy. So thank you all for this wonderful event. Thank you.
Dr. Lee and Mr. Tony Sanwan, any final words today? Please unmute yourself. You're still muted right now.
Is that okay now?
Yes.
Thank you very much, especially to the presenters. I learned a lot, and I hope they will be able to further engage in the solutions or in the recommendations that they're making. And I hope that in the future there will be really, real, genuine reunification between the two Koreas and forming perhaps a federation of the Republic of of Koryo. They call it Koryo. So good luck to all the participants, and thank you. Meeting Jenny, Dr. Hookley, and the MC, Naria, and everybody. It's a pleasure and an honor. Good night. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Ms. Jeannie Kagawa as well, your final words.
Thank you very much for inviting me as a judge for this very exciting Synergy event. I could not imagine what it was all about, but I realized that it is such an incredible platform and attracts brilliant young people that we've seen. Well, I had a hard time voting, to be very frank, because all the presentations were fantastic. They were excellent and also very thought-provoking, even for me. As Dr. Lee said, he learned a lot. He's already very learned, but I also learned so much from each one of you, and I think this is a very exciting way to stimulate young people and professors and even political leaders or leaders of civil society to join together with all of you, because there is hope in the future. And we can see through your presentation that the hope is there, and we rely on the young people to lead the way very actively and excitingly in the future too. So I'm happy to have been present tonight, and congratulations to all of you, and to the winners, Madoka and Kengo, congratulations, and Francois, Francois Lacroix, good job as well. It was hard to vote for you guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you again to all three of our judges, and let's give them a round of applause for being here and casting their wisdom to our young presenters. And now I'd like to introduce again our YSP president for North America, Milhan Stevens, for some closing words.
Yeah, thank you, Joshua. And of course, I have to start by saying congratulations to the presenters. You did it. You've graduated this stage. I know the Madoka and Kengo, you're moving on to regional, so we will definitely support you there. Thank you, judges, for your time and your life dedicated to peace in the world, in all kinds of different ways. It really is an honor for us to have you tonight. To our staff, thank you. I know I know it takes a lot to produce this show, so thank you for being here. I learned so much, and I am American, and I represent North America, so I always love seeing Canada come to the table, and now I have a reason to love Canada even more, because I've kind of forgotten you have a special role to play in peace and of course in the Korean Peninsula. So I'm glad I was able to see that more. This conflict, everyone, is probably the most complex of all. And so, but that's also why I love our young people and thinking outside the box, sometimes way outside the box. And I think that is going to be the only way we can even address these issues. I mean, I've heard nothing but about sanctions, like we have to keep the sanctions, and until we denuclearize, and and I have my own opinions, which I will maybe share another time about the whole subject. But I just love the discussion and the dialogue, and it's so beautiful, to see a completely new idea, which is maybe shouldn't be that new, be put on the table with a lot of thought and precision and research. So, and this is why I love Synergy so much. This platform, it embodies something that our founder, Mother Moon, started, and she created this term called Hyojung. Hyojung is simply two characters, the two Chinese characters. The first one is filial piety, So there's this respect and honoring of your elders and desire to help make their dreams come true. And then you have Jung. Jung is heart, and heart is, it symbolizes or represents this oneness you have with those elders, so that your desire and their desire is one and the same, and you co-create the future together. And that's what synergy does, you know, and that's where we get the wisdom. I can't tell you how many times, Kengo, you said wisdom during your, you know, your response and presentation, because that's exactly right. Because there's, you know, if we can foster this desire for young people to learn and be a sponge, inherit, you know, all of this, oh man, I mean, I love I love each of you judges, because I'm just a fan of you, because I know you thoroughly, more than anyone on the planet, probably understand what's happening on the Korean Peninsula, which is kind of what we dedicated this theme to, because our, you know, Mother Moon has a very particular, let's say, agenda, or, you know, hopes for this year in 2022. So I'm just so happy to see this coming together here. And I just want to wrap up with, you know, just my admiration for Mother Moon. You know, this was a girl who, you know, was born and grew up in North Korea during the war. And if you read her autobiography, you can see the sort of things that happened in her life that would have caused trauma to any other child. But for her, she determined from a young age, like, you know, not even 10 years old, to bring peace and to dedicate her life to that. And she found herself having to make peace in the entire world to make that happen. And her husband also did the same dedication, and he couldn't live to see it himself, but she carried on. And that's the reason why all of us are here, is because of her undying faith and that hope that this can happen. So again, that's just a big thank you to all of you and all of you watching virtually. You know, you are a part of the solution, you know, and so let's keep putting our heads and hearts together to make a real impact in the part of the world that really needs it. So thank you. And we'll see you at on international competition. Thank you so much. Go YSP.
Go YSP indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, our first place winner will be going on to present at the International Synergy Competition to represent North America. So please stay tuned for more information on the YSP USA website and Facebook page for the finalized dates and time in March 2022, that is this year, in 3 months, for how that competition will take place. And let's give our support to Kengo and Madoka for their presentation at that competition. Really, it was an incredible, like both projects, like they should work together, like really, really awesome, both of the ideas that they had to share. So we thank everybody who's watching so much. And before we go, I want to ask all of our judges and presenters, let's turn on our cameras and take a big group photo and a final goodbye to all the guests watching at home. So everyone, big wave, big smile. Thanks everyone for watching at home. We really appreciate everyone here. Thank you.
Thank you, Joshua.
All right. And that's a wrap. Thanks so much, everybody.